milk smell stood up.
Yep. Oh, yeah, that's a sweet one. Yeah.
Our 6-year-old grandson staying with us for 8 days. We went to Minnesota, saw them all. Anyway, but stayed in the camper with us the night before we were gonna leave, because we leave right away in the morning.
Yep.
He wakes
All right, here we go. We'll call the special city council meeting to order today for Monday, June 21st, 2021. It is 4:05. Do apologize for the short delay, as we were just working out a final couple of difficulties and getting everybody connected here. Pledge of allegiance, please.
Roll call?
Roll call first and then pledge of allegiance. How about that?
Evans?
Here.
Janser? Olson? Here. Pittner?
Here.
Padragula?
Here.
Ross?
Here.
Sitma?
Here. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Number 3 is the 6-month performance review of our city manager, Mr. Harold Stewart. We do have Alderwoman Carrie Evans, who has done the compilation of the data, but I think first we'll bring up our HR director, Ms. Lisa Junt, for some of the details.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. I was asked to provide a 360 evaluation, so I did reach out to the Society for Human Resource Management to find a comprehensive evaluation. I think I realize now that, just from some comments, that this probably was probably more of an evaluation for staff versus an evaluation for such diverse groups. Trying to find one that's just an overall, to be able to be used with all the groups that were going to be evaluating the situation was probably going to be very difficult. So if we do move...
Cancer
is now joining.
If you do decide to do this in the future, I would probably suggest that we maybe look at some different tools for that. The interaction, I think, for council and interaction for external stakeholders is a lot different than interaction for staff. So that might be something to think about next time. Otherwise, go ahead.
How many people were asked to provide feedback?
The 7 aldermen, all of the staff, and then I also reached out to 6 external stakeholders. I did not get any information back from the external stakeholders. The one individual that did get back to me basically indicated that it's so new in the process that they didn't feel they had enough interaction to provide feedback. So they didn't want to provide it one way or the other just because there's been limited interaction.
So Ms. Junt, did you have any details, or is this the stuff that we wanted to go over for the numbers? I'm not even sure what we all have in preparation.
I just simply compiled the data, and Alderwoman Evans is doing the analysis on it, so.
It doesn't matter, you can stay there and jump in if there's, because I didn't put in, any, there's some slides at the back with the general feedback, but if we want to pause on any of the comments for the specific questions, like you may think.
And I'll be very honest with you, I've never been involved in this kind of a process with the city manager, so this is a very new process for me as well. So.
Yeah, I think we're all just sort of.
And for the public's sake that might be watching or listening or watch back, this is a new process on the 360 evaluation, something that was written into the contract prior to even the city manager signing on. There was a process that was put in place following the process that brought Harold to us. In all, how many evaluations did come back, Lisa?
We received 19.
19 evaluations, and that included not only the full city council, but also
12
department
staff,
heads.
12 staff members, correct.
And then when we get to each question, I put how many people actually responded to each question, and out of how many of those people were council, right? Because there's some, like 17 people responded, but only 2 of us did. So, that could give some insight, I guess, into.
So I'm going to turn to you, Alderwoman Carrie Evans, if you want to read or maybe just do a high overview of the slides. You've got them in front of you. And Lisa as well, or if you're more comfortable, Lisa, however you want to just kind of put them up.
I can stand
So I
here
don't,
until
I'm totally open to how do we want to go sort of, it was divided into the 5 areas, and then there's questions under each area. Do we, sort of want to go area by area, and then
I think that
Does
sounds
that
fine,
sound
Mr.
like a good
Mayor.
plan for people?
I think the high overview on that, just to give not
Okay.
only the full council, maybe staff and the public an idea of what it is that we're referencing and talking about, that would be just fine. So
Okay.
please continue.
So this slide is just the averages from all of the respondents, so everybody who responded in the 5 areas, the average, and then the overall average, with the top line, the gold being non-council, so staff, the blue line being council respondents, and then the green line is everybody together's averages. So, we see that, I'm not going to read it off unless somebody wants me to. That, I guess in all of them, the council average was exceeded the 4, which is the exceed standards. And with the averages, in each case, it exceeded 3.5, which would have been right between meet standards and exceed standards. So, you want to move on to the next one?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the first category questions were on what I guess we called valuing behaviors. Those are the questions there at the bottom on the horizontal axis with the averages again. The first one being all respondents, the middle one, the blue, being council's responses, and the yellow being non-council. At the bottom in red is how many people actually answered that question, and out of that, how many of those were council members. So for instance, on that second question, only 10 people answered that question, and only 2 of those were council. So that's, not a large percentage. So we see the average in valuing behaviors, for all respondents is almost at 4, councils being 4.3, and non-council being 3.6. And then the second category of behaviors that the instrument was trying to measure was on interdependent behavior. And those 5 questions are at the bottom underneath the bars. Again, very close to 4 on all of those for council average. The third category was communication behaviors. These questions, sort of dealt with how the city manager communicates with everyone. Average 3.5 there if you take council and non-council together. And then the 3 questions on valuing diversity, pretty sure all, 4 and above for council averages. Leadership behaviors, this was the largest sort of set of questions looking at almost 10 or 11 things. Qualities, again, the average was 3.6, councils was 4.1, and non-council had a 3.4 average. And then just a few slides, on general feedback that people provided from Mr. Stewart. So if we want to, now circle back, and I don't know how folks want to do it, but.
Well, I would first, I think maybe if any of the elected first have any comments on there, I'll start off. I really don't have much of anything. This is what I pretty much expected from a 360 evaluation for 6 months. Dialing back to even when our former city manager, his predecessor, Mr. Staub, and most even department heads or new people to an organization, it takes 6 months to really get a full understanding of not only the scope of what is going on, but really get an understanding of what each individual within the organization, the role that they play. And in this circumstance, it's, of course, at the CM level, it's an even bigger picture to try to bring into full focus. I think Mr. Stewart's done an outstanding job. I do want to dial back to one specifically, and that was the only one that was actually below the 3 mark, and that was the 2.9 involved in decision making. And this goes back, I think, in my perspective, exactly the issue that I think put our finger on and identified at our council retreat, is that there are the CM position is exactly the purpose of making decisions, and a lot of times that's going to be decisions that do not include the governing body, that likely can have the full staff's input, but the decision has to come from the CM. And I think that was one of the takeaways that we came from our retreat, is that's why we hired that position, and that's why we kept this form of government rather than going to a strong mayor and overhauling a lot of the processes that I think make Minot's form of government not just unique in North Dakota, but to me more functional compared to going the other direction and having full-time elected officials, or a difference in that regard. So those are my only comments, and I would look to any of the other council. Alderwoman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two things, and I'll just reference the retreat as well, when we were reminded that we look at things with different lenses. As a governing body, we have one perspective and one sort of expectation for Mr. Stewart, where the employees have a different lens or perspective. And you can see the values that are a little bit different in there. Secondly, I think that when the survey or evaluation was sent out, I was one of the first to respond. As soon as I got it, I took it. And that was prior to our budget meetings. It was prior to our retreat. And I know even in a month's time, my numbers would even be higher. I mean, I applaud you, Mr. Stewart. I think you were doing an excellent job. But my numbers would even be higher because of that, because I feel like we've had the opportunity to get to know you more, know your style more, know your leadership qualities. And so I look forward to doing this again in 6 months, because I think that the numbers will be even higher.
Any other, Alderman Ross?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to agree with you, Sean, or Mr. Mayor, on this, that, really for 6 months, just getting your feet on the ground, I think this was really expected. It was expected numbers, but I think at the same time, it gives the positive feedback to Mr. Stewart to show, if there was a 3.9 or a 2.9 or something, it still is positive enough feedback to where the next 6 months or the next year, I think it gives him a roadmap for improvement. Not that, a roadmap to work on, and a roadmap to move forward, but for 6 months, this is wonderful. Thank you.
Alderwoman Evans.
Can I ask Mr. Stewart some questions?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, Harold, what do you think has went well in your first 6 months? What was most frustrating? What didn't go so well? Just getting your feedback on what your 6 months with us have been like.
Well, it's always a difficult transition for a position at this stature to come into a community. It's, there's excitement, there's trepidation, and you're trying to balance all of that. I think as far as things that have gone well, great community, great staff. I don't know, I've been surprised by a whole lot based off of my research of Minot and considering of acceptance of the position and those types of things. I think a lot of the challenges that I expected are true, are here with some of the things but I also believe that the leadership and the staff and the community are in place, and that you're cognizant, you're realistic of what those challenges are, and you want to make improvements in those areas for your community and for your organization. And I think that's a positive. Challenges, it's probably not going to be much of a surprise. I tell people this all the time. There's two things that through my career I've discovered that people hate. One is that nothing ever changes, and two, that they hate change. And I think that's some of the struggle here. Change is always difficult, especially for an organization. And I bring a different background and perspective and experience to this position than perhaps maybe Minot has had for some time. I've intentionally tried to take a slow, steady approach. When I got here, I felt like staff was pretty stressed on some things, and so I've tried to give some space to breathe and kind of relax a little bit, settle down. And I've intentionally, and I told this to the council when I interviewed, I'm probably not going to make a whole lot of significant changes in the first 6 months because I want to get a good lay of the organization and the culture of the community and the organization and those types of things. And so I've really tried to refrain from making a lot of changes. But with that being said, we have implemented some changes with regards to the budget process. And of course, we had to deal with COVID and policies and those types of things. And there's a lot of changes to come forward in the future. I think for me, the biggest challenges have been two things. The first one being is change is hard. And, I bring a different level of experience. And so some of my perspective requires some difference. And, having the staff get a feel for me and my style is a little bit different. And to some extent, we're getting ready to do this process with all the management team where we're doing this, what we call an SDI assessment. It talks about your strengths and your weaknesses and how you look at things and how you interact. And I just got done mine, and I'm what's called a hub. And basically what that means is, depending on the situation, will determine what approach I take. Sometimes I become very analytical. Sometimes people are important to me in a decision. Sometimes I find myself in a situation where I have to be somewhat aggressive in getting something done. But the situation dictates which role I take in that. And that can be a little bit confusing for staff sometimes because they may not see me being consistent because it depends on the situation, on what role I feel is necessary for the good of the organization to make that decision. And that can be a bit difficult for some. And I guess the other thing would just be is that I have intentionally kind of just taken a slow pace to try and get used to things. And I think there's, I have some staff that, prefer that I stay out of things. And then I have some staff that really want me to, get neck deep and make decisions and say how things are going to get done. And we're trying to figure out that balance going forward. So, but overall, again, I think the first 6 months have gone about as well as expected. Again, I've tried to work on building relationships both internally and externally. That's been my major focus. And I've told people that, getting through the budget process will be when I really get the nuts and the bolts of the organization and where things are and why and what we're doing and those types of things, which we just started that today in earnest. And so I think here over the next few weeks, I think you'll see me kind of taking on more of a role as part of the city manager. And then the other piece that I would say is difficult, and again, we discussed this through the retreat recently, and again, it goes back to my style, and particularly addressing about the participation in decisions. It depends on the decision that needs to be made on how I'm going to approach that, right? Some of that I'm going to seek a lot of input. It'll involve council, it'll involve the entire management staff, it'll decide, those types of things. Some things it may be just a few, right? I'm not going to involve everybody, but I will try to bring in those that I feel that are pertinent to that decision. In some instances, I'm going to make that decision on my own. Although it's going to be fairly rare. I don't tend to make a lot of unilateral decisions. But again, I try to play a balance on that, and I tailor that to whatever I feel the need is and what's the best way to resolve that need. So I think we have good staff. I believe that everyone that I've worked with are competent and do a good job. Their heart's in the right place. And hopefully here through the management retreat that we have here in July, hopefully we can bring some of them together a little bit better and resolve some of those outstanding issues that still seem to linger from the transition and everything they've been here over the last few months. So I hope that answers your question. I'd be happy to answer any other questions. And FYI, I believe ICMA has a 360 tool for city managers that I'll be happy to see if I can track down and provide to Lisa so you guys can review that and see if that's a better fit for what you're trying to do as well.
Just one quick follow-up.
Yep.
So was there anything, like, when you were looking through sort of the results and stuff, was anything surprising, like where you thought, oh, I thought I was doing better in that, or like, oh, I thought I sort of was deficient in that and they thought I was great? Anything that jumped out that is being inconsistent with your own, like, sort of self-reflection?
But the only two surprises I had, one I already addressed, and that's the staff not feeling like they're involved in the decision-making process, because I've tried to make a concerted effort in doing that through the department head meetings, the one-on-ones with each, every month I have a one-on-one with department heads and those types of things. And so, the COVID policies, that was a management decision. I didn't unilaterally make that. We talked about that as a management team, and we came to a consensus on that, and that's my style. So I was a little surprised that some employees didn't feel like they were included in some decisions. And the other one would be is just, there were several comments about my always referring to previous organizations that I've worked for. And I think some of my perspective on that is, to some extent, the last couple, at least the last two city managers before me, this was their first city manager job. And so I think your management team has been in a role of basically training a city manager. There's a learning curve that comes that you don't really experience until you're actually in the chair. And I think some of the staff have kind of defaulted to that. And so I've been trying to establish credibility with the staff that when things come up, I have experience dealing with a lot of these things. And I tend to share that experience by sharing stories and experiences, right? You've probably heard me do several presentations where I give stories and experiences. I think that's the best way to teach and to connect. And so that's what I use heavily. And I think that's what a lot of that goes to. One is I'm trying to establish credibility that I've been around the block a few times and I've handled a lot of these issues. It's never with the intent that that's the only way to do it and we're going to change things to be done the way I've done it in previous communities. I believe when I interviewed with the council, that I think I even stated that just because it works in one community doesn't mean it's going to work in the next. And something that may have failed in a previous community may succeed here. And I'm always open to looking at those, but I guess I was a little bit taken back a little bit by some of the animosity and some of the comments with regards to that.
Any other questions while we've kind of shifted in that direction? Alderman Pargula.
One of the questions I always ask my staff when we have an evaluation, a periodic evaluation, is how can I be a better boss? How can I enable you to do your job more effectively, given the understanding that you know more about the job on a moment-to-moment, day-to-day basis than I do, and have the skill set to deal with it. So I guess that's the question I'd ask. What do you need from us? And the answers I get from my staff, might be more direction, might be, a software program, might be sending them to a workshop or something like that, some staff development issue. Occasionally it's a human resource issue about more flexibility with working hours, although that's about as flexible as it ever gets. Seems like we've almost don't run a daycare at times in my practice, but it's how family friendly we've been. But I guess I'd be interested in hearing, what we could do to make you more effective, with the understanding, again, that we're kind of feeling each other out. I mean, you're bringing in your expertise, your maturity, and I think very, very wisely taking more of a passive role right now, more soaking in information rather than getting ahead and charging and setting some direction, getting on the horse and leading us into battle, if you will. And I think, when I looked at my comments, I think, or the negative comments, I guess most of them I think reflect more on us, that we haven't perhaps given you the direction that changed. I think with the meeting, the retreat workshop we had, I think there was a very positive kind of sharing of kind of directions. So I saw most of the negative ratings actually as reflecting as much on us as on you. But anyway, having said all that stuff, what would you be looking for from us to help you be more effective?
It's a great question, and again, I would probably turn back to the conversation that we had last weekend with the retreat as far as the different roles. And, my job is to be in the gap, right? I'm not really ever purely on the council side. I'm never really purely on the staff side. I'm in the middle trying to help communicate and helping things get done and translated back and forth and those types of things. And so for me is just, to do your role the best that you can, which I believe you guys are trying to do. And I wouldn't have come to work for you if I didn't think that you were willing to do that. And so, give staff the trust and the credibility, including myself, to do my job. And, I want you to be informed. and we're trying to play this balance between trying to keep you informed without, micromanaging and some of those types of things. Let us do our jobs. Let us have some trust and some credibility. We're competent in what we do, and we're here to help, and we take pride in our work. And so, for me, that's one of my key pieces. I take a lot of pride in the fact that, and I try to be the best city manager that I can. I continue to try to keep myself educated and abreast of what the trends and the policies and the adaptations are that we need to make and those types of things. And I'm going to try to help this organization operate at a high level. So just continue to support that and continue to understand and play your role in that, and let staff do their part. And together, I think we'll find that we can accomplish a lot more together than maybe what we've done in the past, and everyone will be happier and have more pride in the organization that we're building and the community that we're building.
Thank you.
Alderman Janser, I'm not able to see a hand raised or anything on your side. Do you have any comments or questions on the phone?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I think that most of the observations that have been made, I would agree with. I think I concur that we're pretty early in the process as these employment relationships go. I think I just would hope, and I believe that we will continue to have good, positive, open communication, and I would encourage employees who either feel like they're not getting enough communication from Herald or would like something in a different way, to at least to make that known so that it can be dealt with, and I'm confident that it will be. So I think this was a good exercise, and as was stated, we're all kind of first timers at this, so I think we'll get better as we go through it down the road.
Thank you, Alderman Janser. Any other comments or questions at this time? Alderwoman Evans.
So Harold, tell us about what the next 6 months, what you're hoping your next 6 months look like, what some of your goals are.
Well, first and foremost, it would be budget. We have a lot of work to do on the budget here over the next few weeks. And then also building off of last weekend, off of the council's direction, I'm really looking forward to July 15th and working with the staff, building an organizational mission statement and values that pair with that. I am also working on getting a quote from the facilitator of kind of doing the last step of a strategic plan, and talking with her with the processes that we'll have gone through both this month and next month. You pretty much have 3 of the 4 steps of a strategic plan done. And so finishing that out, which would include some public input with the council after we get the community survey. So getting the community survey done is another key piece for me, because I think that's just critical for how we prioritize and make decisions on behalf of the community going forward. And then just continuing to assess some of our processes and policies internally within the organization. I think the personnel policies need some discussion and some revamp. Although I'm waiting for some big projects to get off the plate of some of the staff. I don't want to overwhelm them. But I think there's going to be a time that we're going to have to review through some of that and update some of those. And then getting the website done, increase transparency to the public, and hopefully engage the public in better ways through media and the internet, I think will be crucial. And then part of that will also include taking some of these pieces that we've created, the aspirations the council determined through your strategic planning, the mission statement and values of the organization, really incorporated into that into the website rebuild. And now we use that to build trust and credibility with our public and our constituents, that we're doing the best we can to make sure that they have representation, but that we're also putting their taxpayer dollar to the best benefit that we can to the community as a whole as we're going forward. And then we're trying to use the best professional standards to do that going forward. That in itself is enough to accomplish for the next 6 months. So, and then adapt to anything else that comes up in the next 6 months. So,
Further questions or comments at this time? If not, we do have one decision that has to be made in our special meeting, and because under contractual obligation, we do have to vote on whether or not to meet the agreement of the contract to increase the salary to the predetermined level stated in the contract, or to leave it where it is with justifications that would be provided for that. So I would look to the council for direction on what obligation we are looking for. Alderman Ross.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the evaluation along with the contractual pay increase.
A motion, second by Alderwoman Evans. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Final call for discussion. Seeing none, the motion is to approve the evaluation with the contractual pay increase. Please call the roll.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
yes.
Padrigula.
Yes.
Motion is approved. That does bring us to the end of our agenda for our special city council meeting, so we are adjourned.